Welcome back to the Knowledgeable Programmer. This is the series we're doing to learn Express routes and how Express backends work. I'm here with my good friend Lloyd, and we will keep going through this course. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you love it. Let's continue, Lloyd.
Okay, so setting status codes. Express allows us to set the status code on responses before they are sent. Response codes provide information to clients about how their requests were handled. Until now, we've been allowing the Express server to set status codes for us. For example, any res.send has by default sent a 200 OK status code. The res object has a .status method to allow us to set the status code, and other methods like .send can be chained from it. So we've got some example code here, Will.
Yeah.
So it looks like we've got an object stored to monster store inventory. Yeah. And
Yeah, basically a list. It's a different way of having different monsters and their quantities. And if you look here, they're using just res.send if everything goes okay, but they have an else statement here that is saying res.status.404, and the message is self-explanatory. It means that the monster was not found. But yeah, like they said in the little introduction, res.send has automatically the 200 status code if it's returning something valid.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. In this example, we've implemented a route to retrieve inventory levels from a monster store. Inventory levels are kept in the monster store inventory variable, which is this one. When a request arrives for monsters inventory Mothman, the route matches, because we've got monsters inventory, so that's matched. So the callback's invoked. Request.params.name will be equal to Mothman, and so our program accesses monster store inventory with the key, which is this, of Mothman. Since there are no Mothman in our inventory, res.status sets a 404 status code on the response, and .send sends it back to the client.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that, Will?
Yeah, basically, like they were explaining the else clause here.
Yeah.
If the monster is not in the inventory, then we will catch that monster. That the if statement will fail. It's gonna be false because there will not be no monster in that inventory. It doesn't have that key. So it will fail the if, and we will set the status of 404 to the response and chain on the send method.
So it says here, well, let's make sure that our get expressions ID route handles invalid requests. For instance, if we get a request for an expression that does not exist, complete your route so that it sends back the correct expression object if it exists, and sends back a 404 response if it does not.
Yeah, we can do that. That's pretty straightforward. It's basically what the example was doing.
Yeah, this is the code that we want. So in the example, the first off, we had an if statement. So we're looking for this.
Exactly.
And if this is true,
basically, yeah, you can send that
res.send. And I'll just clean this up a little bit. And if that's not true, we're going to do a res.status.
Correct.
Status. And that takes a string, Will?
No, it takes actually a number, the 404.
Right, okay. And we're going to do a dot send. And what are we sending up?
We can send them a clear message that of what happened, that they are expecting a monster, but we can send that they're expecting an expression. So yeah, the expression was not found.
Okay. So I'm going to need to start the server. So node app.js. And then I can refresh. So let's test it out. So if I pass the ID of 1, well, we know that's there because we saw it earlier, right?
Yes. So pass maybe like a 300 or something.
Or maybe 1,000 or 100. Okay, so we've got
Yes.
404 not found. So to prove this then, if we go to the actual route,
Yes.
so let's just pass that route and we'll pass through 1,000. We'll hit it. Yeah.
We get our message back.
Cool. Okay, so matching longer route paths. Paths are extremely helpful in making server routes dynamic and able to respond to different inputs. Route parameters will match anything in the specific part of the path. So a route matching, monster / name would match all of the following paths. Yeah, so it would
Yeah,
hit all these.
it could have different lengths, and it doesn't matter as long as it's after the monster slash, you could pass whatever
Mm.
and it will match it.
In order for a request to match a route path, it must match the entire path, as shown in the diagram to the right. Okay, so let's look at the diagram. So we've got a request come in for expressions 1. So if we go through this one, so the verb matches the get.
Exactly. But the route, the endpoint is different.
Yeah. So this fails and it's going to go on to the next one. Yeah. And the verb matches, the route matches. So the callback's going to be fired.
Exactly.
So in order for a request to match a route path, it must match the path exactly, the entire path as shown in the diagram to the right. The request arrives for /monsters1. It first tries to match the expressions route, but because it has additional path segments after the expressions, it doesn't match this route and it's just going to move on. It matches to the next route because the ID will match any value at that level of the path segment. So the route matches, so the Express server calls the callback function, which in turn handles the request and sends the response, which we see right there. It hits this, the callback runs, we get the expression by ID, pass in the request.params.id, save it to this variable, and then we send it back.
Yes.
So other HTTP methods?
Yeah,
So
this is gonna be talking about other HTTP verbs that are possible to be used in Express servers, and basically, like I told you in the first episode, there are put, post, delete, get, and patch. But I'm not sure if they're gonna use the patch since they're explicitly using put.
no worries. So the HTTP protocol defines a number of different method verbs with many use cases. So far, we've been using the GET request, which is probably the most common of all. Every time your browser loads an image, it is making a GET request for that file. This course will cover 3 other important HTTP methods: the put, post, and delete. Express provides methods for each one. So app.put, app.post, app.delete. So the put requests are used for updating existing resources. In our Express Yourself machine, a put request will be used to update the name or emoji of an expression already saved in our database. For this reason, we will need to include a unique identifier as a route parameter to determine which specific resource to update. So let's open this up a bit. In fact, I think I can just pull this right down. So move this across. So for now, open a put expressions ID route with an empty callback function. Okay. So it's asking me to do an app
.put
and that's going to hit expressions.
/ID.
Yeah. And then we're going to run the callback. So request, response, next, and it says here, basically that's it. So using queries, you may have noticed in the previous exercise that our put route had no information about how to update the specified expression, just the ID of which expression to update. It turns out that there was more information in the request in the form of a query string. Excuse me. Query strings appear at the end of the path in URLs, and they are indicated with a question mark character. For instance, in monsters /1, let me just make this a bit bigger. It might be easier to read. So in this route, we've got monsters 1 question mark name equals chimera, the ampersand, age equals 1. The query string is name equals chimera and age equals 1, and the path is monsters 1. So what's going on, Will, in this?
Basically, the query strings are going to be passed after the question mark. This is the way that we could receive information from the client or the browser to be able to have something new to update what we already have. In this specific case, they are sending, since the examples work with monsters, they're sending us the name of the monster and the new age that they want to modify. After they send us, they gave us the ID. So basically, everything after the question mark is gonna be the query string. The ampersand is there because that's the way we can add more than one value to our query strings. In this case, we have 2 query strings, name and age.
Right, okay. So query strings do not count as part of the route path. Instead, the Express server passes them into a JavaScript object and attaches it to the request body as the value of rec.query. The key value relationship is indicated by the equal sign, which is this there, equals character in a query string, and key value pairs are separated by the ampersand. In the above example route, the rec.query object would be name, chimera, age 1. So we've got some example code. So again, we've got what looks like our database. So we've got an object. The key is 1 and the value is this object.
Yeah.
So
that's what we have as our information that is stored in our in-memory database.
Right. So we've got an app.put with monsters ID, and then we've got the
yeah, sorry. The important thing is that the query string is not part of the endpoint. It is like they said, it is gonna be put in an object and attached to the request object. So the request will have the object query, and that query will hold the key value pairs that were passed.
Okay, so what's going on with this code in here then? So this is the rec.doc. So we're saving rec.query back to this variable.
Yes, they are set. Basically, if you go to the paragraph that was above the code example, it says that what's stored in request.query is an object containing two keys, which are name and age, and two values, chimera and one. So
Yeah.
basically, we are storing this object into the constant variable monster updates.
Right. Okay. Okay. And then the monsters rec.params.id equals monsters update. So
Yeah.
whatever's in this array at the ID. So in this instance, we're going to have the key of 1.
Yeah, and notice that in this example, the key wasn't a number.
Yeah.
So the ID, we can use it right as it comes because it will be a string. So you won't have to convert it. So basically, whatever is stored in the monsters array with the key that was passed as our parameter ID, we will override. And we will override with what we got with the object we got from request.query.
Makes sense. So here we have a route for updating monsters by ID. When I put monsters 1, name equals chimera and age equal 1 arrives, our callback function is called and we create a monsters update variable to store the rec.query. Since rec.params.id is 1, we replace monsters 1's value with monsters update. Finally, Express sends the new monsters back. When updating, many servers will send back the updated resource after the updates are applied so that the client has the exact same version of the resource as the server and database. Okay, so let's have a look at the question and we can get some code written. So it says here, use rec.query to update the proper element in the expressions array. So we've got a app.put somewhere. Yeah. We've imported a helper function from utils.js to help with this task. You can use the update element helper function in your put route. It takes 3 arguments: the ID, the query arguments, so the new object, the new updated expression object from rec.query, and the element list, the array which contains the elements to update. Update element. So okay, so there's a few steps to this. So
Yeah, they are simplifying the way you do this just to focus on the new concepts, because doing this task without this helper function will involve more code.
yeah. So the update element updates that specific element in the element list array. You'll pass in the expressions array. Be sure to check that an expression with the ID you provide exists in the array. Get indexed by ID can help with this. To test your functionality with the express yourself machine, make sure your server is running, get all expressions, and then use the update tab to select an individual expression. Okay, cool. So, well, the first thing I want to do then is I want to find the.
We can do a couple things, like we can get whatever is stored in the request.query,
Yeah.
but they specifically say that we need to check that the object exists in our array. So, and they suggest that we use the previous helper function that we use in our previous step, get element by ID.
So I suppose the first thing I want to do then is make a const called updated. Let me just fix this typo. I'm going to make one called the updated expression and equal that to rec.query. So this is coming back. This is the request that's coming into the back end.
Exactly. That's will store whichever values that the person wants to update from the expression. The key thing is, since we're using a put method, we need to pass every single property that that object will have. We will have to put the ID, the string of text that says what expression it is in text, and the emoji.
Yeah. So it says here, be sure to check that an expression with the ID you provide exists. So I could do something like const check ID is going to be equal to the return value of this function.
Yeah.
And we know this takes an ID from the last one, and it takes. Let me just double check. So there it is. Look, it takes an ID and an element. So the element we know is the array. App.put. So I know that's going to be the second argument, and the first one's the ID. So that's going to have to come in on the rec.params.id.
Yeah, but the key thing here is that when they showed us what the IDs were for expressions, remember that it was numbers, that the ID was a number. So we do have to do that step again of converting to a number.
Yeah, okay. So let me just convert that to a number. Chop that out. So rec.params.id.
Yes.
So now we're saying, okay, so I found it with.
Yeah. So basically, if you do find it, then we are going to use that other helper function that they gave us to update the element. So you can do an if statement, checking, basically if check ID is truthy, and we will use that update element function.
Okay, so we're going to call this helper function.
It takes 3 parameters, the ID.
Yeah, which we know is this.
Yeah, copy it with number because it's still a number.
Okay, 2 secs. Yeah. Okay, so we pass in the ID.
Then we pass the updated expression.
Yeah, and then the array, right?
And then the name of the array, yeah.
Which is expressions.
But I'm not sure if expressions goes as that or goes in as a string. Let's check what the
helper function.
Yes.
So the update helper function is there. So yeah, it just takes an array, look.
Okay.
Well, look what we've got here. We've got this. So the check that we need to do is in the if statement. I think we need to be checking here if check ID dot index of is not equal to -1.
Okay, we can use check ID is not equal to my -1.
Yeah, so not equal to -1. Yeah, so if that is true, then we run this function, and we've got to send something back here, right?
Yeah, you should do like rest.send and and wrap the send, wrap everything of the update element there, or you can save the line number 33
To a variable.
to a variable.
Okay, nice. And if that's not true, I suppose they want the status again, isn't it? So
Yeah,
is the
404.
404 and then dot send expression not found.
Very good.
Yeah, happy?
Uh, yeah, start the server.
We can debug, can't we, if we hit something. So check work. And now I'd be amazed if this actually worked first time. Wow, it did. I'm shocked. So how do they say that we wanted to test it? So to test your functionality with the Express machine, make sure your server is running. Okay, so first of all, it's asking me to make a GET request. So
There is a button down there that says refresh expressions.
Okay, so I get all the expressions. Then use the update. Okay, so I'll update the second one with the ID of 2.
You need to pass the name.
And the name. Oh wow, look at this. So well, I'll call it KP for knowledgeable programmer. Okay, so now then, if I go to that route, which is this one, and I put that in the browser with the ID of 2, and there it is. Look, there's the name.
Yes. So we successfully did this exercise, and keep on the lookout for more of these tutorials as we go through this magnificent course of Codecademies. And we will hopefully help you along your journey of learning Express. Thanks for watching, and hit the bell icon for keeping the notifications. Thanks.